There'll be a lot of yeses.
Can you hear us, Councilman?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. $4.
I will call to order the special call meeting of June 26, 2024. Ms. Randy, will you do the roll call, please?
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Akins Wells, council members, and City Manager, Mr. Clark. This is the roll call for the special call meeting of June 26, 2024 at 4 p.m. Mayor Butler. Let the record reflect Mayor Butler is not in attendance. Councilwoman James.
Present.
Councilmember Anton.
President, everybody.
Councilmember Gutierrez. Mayor Pro Tem Akins Wells.
Here.
Councilmember Mears.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Akins Wells, you have a quorum.
Floor's yours. Okay, where we at?
Just adoption.
I'll let you continue so I catch my breath.
Okay, adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Governing body members, I submitted to you an email relative to our property casualty and loss insurance. This is an emergency item that we are requesting to have added onto the agenda. Our broker from Gallagher is here to discuss this with you. All of the information has been distributed rather. The urgency of this matter is that our renewal date is 7/1. Again, this is based upon our new brokers continuously trying to ensure that we had the best offer for renewal that we could. And after evaluating all of the offers and options that we had, we're presenting this to you as an emergency add-on, as this item has to be ratified before Friday. And again, it's just relative to the property casualty and loss insurance.
I got it. You said they're here, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, if the representative from Gallagher, you have the floor, sir.
Motion.
Oh, that's right. Is there a motion to adopt tonight's agenda with this addition? That was Councilwoman Wells. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Councilman Mears. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Aye.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. I do have a question. I thought special call I'm Attorney Metro. I thought special call meetings were not allowed to add additional items.
Generally, you're not. However, since this is an emergency, and also is related to the budget adoption, it's permissible in this,
Okay, thank you.
one instance.
Aye.
No.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Clark. In front of everyone, you should have Gallagher's executive summary for your 2024 property casualty insurance renewal. This document is as it states, a summary meant for this executive body to be able to do a high-level overview of the renewal, of the results. And I don't know if anybody's had a chance to review in advance. All right, so I will take everybody through it. So to begin with, my name is Matt Simmons. I'm Senior Director of Gallagher's Public Sector and Education Practice Group, based up out of Atlanta. I know that you all met my colleague, Mr. Duhart, a few months back when Gallagher was named as the broker. He has a new baby, so he is not here. About a week and a half old, so he's on daddy duty. But I appreciate the opportunity to come. We became your broker right around beginning of April, mid-April. And from there, we've been working with Mr. Clark, Ms. Lewis, and the team to develop your insurance renewal. In here is, in this document is a little bit of information about Gallagher. Some information about the current market. And so let me tell you about that a little bit. We are in basically the hardest market for governmental risk there kind of has ever been, regarding for things ranging from climate change impacting your property to social inflation, nuclear verdicts impacting your liability, increased costs for vehicles, impacting your auto. We've been in a very difficult place in addition to having the markets, many markets de-risking in this area where they're not comfortable writing governmental risks anymore. So the first few pages, page 2 is just a quick overview of Gallagher, which I believe you all have been made familiar, but we put this in the document. Pages 3 through 6 are an overview of the market. As I mentioned, we're seeing increases across the board in the governmental sector, especially in Georgia. Georgia is the most difficult judicial jurisdiction in the country as of this past year. So we're seeing increases in rewards, increases in demands, which results in driving up costs from an insurance standpoint for the governmental sector. So across the board, we're seeing people with increases, and then based on loss experiences, carriers taking much more drastic positions regarding their risk appetite. Is there any question about that? I did just kind of a quick brief overview as opposed to going through everything in here.
Any questions or comments from the governing body?
Right. Flipping over to page 7, this is just a quick overview of how we operate as opposed to just going out, getting a quote. We take a real strategic approach to your total cost of risk, not just your premiums, but what does it cost for deductibles? What it costs for expenses? What it costs for everything? And we break it down in multiple different areas to really help make sure that we're attacking your risk, not just placing insurance, taking much more proactive approach there. Page 8 is a quick overview of your loss experience. This is a germane component to the renewal results that we have. What we're showing here is the most recent 10 years of your loss experience, where the carrier's focus is in the most recent 5 full years. So you'll see that highlighted, and we provide a graphical representation of that, showing what your average annual losses are down towards the bottom of the upper box, looking at your 10-year annual and your 5-year annual average losses. So when you look at it from a 5-year annual average loss perspective, we're running at about $619,000 a year. That is driven primarily from really in that bucket. We're in actually a very good year right now. But this loss experience has had a significant impact on the insurance market's appetite for a traditional risk program for the city of Forest Park. What we're going to get into, and I believe that Mr. Clark may have already disseminated something to you, an email that we reviewed yesterday, is we're moving towards what's called a protected self-insurance model for the city of Forest Park. And I know when people hear self-insurance, alarms start to go off. But I know that the city already is self-insured or self-funded on your benefits, and self-insured on your workers' compensation. So this is not a foreign model for the city of Forest Park. But what it's doing is really changing the way that you finance your risk, as opposed to paying the money to the insurance carriers upfront and say, deal with our claims. We're buying excess liability coverage, basically stop loss coverage, so that, and then taking on a level of risk on the front end so that you're managing your claims more, managing the claim dollars, managing how things are handled, and having an ability to take more control over your program. So before I get into that whole thing, I want to give you all a quick overview on page 10. Talking about the results and the reason I bring up the model that we're looking at. So we took the city's insurance program out to the marketplace to look at who would be available. So your current insurer for your property, your general liability, your automobile liability, AmGuard, is exiting the insurance marketplace for governmental risks. So they aren't writing the business anymore. They are non-renewed the account because they now renewed their entire book of business. So we went out and looked at all the other available markets for a similar standard guaranteed cost market. And in front of you are the results that we received from those package markets. Basically, everybody looking at declining due to the loss experience that I reviewed a couple pages earlier. I'll take another pause and look for questions. So I realized I did not ask for questions about the loss experience. Does anybody have any questions up to this point?
I do have, excuse me, I do have a couple of questions just on the graph. Just wanted to
ma'am.
get some accuracy on the
Yes.
acronyms that are used. What is APD and EP?
Great question, ma'am. Auto physical damage,
Okay.
employment practices liability insurance.
Any other questions or comments? You may continue.
So as I was mentioning on page 10, this is an overview of the results we got. And forgive me, I forgot the one update on, we also brought you to Georgia Municipal Association's government program. Yesterday afternoon, they declined the risk. And that's my apologies that I did not update that from pending to decline. So with that, we looked at all the available markets that we could to do what's called a guaranteed cost program, which is what most people are familiar with a smaller deductible. Carrier pays the claims and you just kind of let things go about as they are. So with that, we started evaluating the protected self-insured model. And we went out and looked at, which would result in a split peril program, which means you have standalone property with a single carrier, and then your casualties all with one carrier, or your professional liability, your general liability, all those areas. And we went out and we looked at we approached 4 different markets, and we put together what we view is the best program. And when we get to the results page next, the results, when you look at it from a cost basis, are actually quite favorable for the city. So with any questions about the marketing efforts?
Any questions by the governing body?
One of the things, I'm sorry, Mayor Butler, one of the things I want to explain to the governing body is this marketing effort is very similar to what we do for our healthcare. And so it's just different market, different carriers, et cetera. And so I want to drive home that the reason this is an emergency is because none of the traditional insurance companies, inclusive of the one that the city had for a number of years, AmGuard, which is going out of writing governmental risk at all, any governmental entity based upon the risk, none of the other entities would essentially provide a quote or they decline. I am curious about the declination of Tokyo based upon proximity to Atlanta. I've never seen that.
Yeah, so Tokyo Marine, they're a player in the space, and they're really, they aren't writing anything within 25 miles of what is considered Metro Atlanta. And it's just their risk appetite. In all honesty, it is their risk appetite. It really kind of gets more down to more condensed population centers, because when you do have more condensed population centers, obviously auto tends to be more of an issue because you got more people on the road, and your vehicles out there, that could be an issue, but it's just their approach. We have brought a number of opportunities to them over the past year, and that's just the approach that they're taking these days of not looking at it. And that's what it means is that they're not an option for Forest Park based on your proximity to what is considered Metro Atlanta, because you do fall within Metro Atlanta, and there's no definitive definition of that. It's kind of a generalized understanding of what you consider Metro.
Mayor Butler, the last thing on page 8, the graph before the one that we're looking at, in the highest peak for this city, the highest year was 2020. And I'm educating because sometimes I've heard constituents or people allude to the fact of government organizations are going to a self-insured model because there are so many lawsuits against the various municipalities based upon all of these things. But in this graph, what you can see is you see an incline in 2020, but that incline in 2020 was due to automobile accidents.
It doesn't look great, and that's again on us of not doing a better job. It's a combination of auto and public officials coverage, because you'll see there's kind of 2 greens there. But if you do look up at the 2020, we did have $334,000 in auto, which is a significant high mark. But if you look at under the public officials line, there's $674,000 there as well. So that is a big pop. When you look at the APD column, that is a very big pop there. That was a bad year for auto accidents.
And if you look at this trend, the trend is going down for automobile. I think automobile will be on the uptick this year, but automobile and the professional public officials, you can see where it's trending downward. 2020, 2020, it was 674 for public officials. 2021, it was 244 for public officials. 2022, it was 18,000. And then 2023, at the time of this presentation, based upon the loss experience, it was 0. And that's really what you want to see
Absolutely.
with your programs, especially as we move forward with additional training opportunities for staff and directors. That's really the trend that you want to see. However, based upon them using this loss period of 5 to 7 years, it still doesn't help us in this run. But if we keep it like this, we'll be able, hopefully, to go back to a traditional market if we don't find that the self-insured route is the best for this organization.
And Mr. Claude, that's a great point, because what I can tell you is that a lot of organizations, when they do move to a self-insured model, they enjoy the increased control over their program. So you may not make the move backwards. Now, if we continue on a trend like this, really, if you look at it in just a few years, the insurance markets, from an actuarial standpoint, you will be viewed as a far better risk, because again, they look at 5 full years. So once these years drop off, that's what they're rating you off of. So if we continue these trends, yes. And at that time, we'll bring those options, but there may be a determination from the city that we actually enjoy this increased control. We enjoy the position that we're in now. We may stick this out. Any other comments, Mr. Clark, or questions from anybody else?
I just wanted to make sure I drove that fact home with the governing body members.
Councilwoman James.
Yes, so just want to make sure I'm clear with the self-insured model. I see it says 100,000 to 200,000. Are we saying that whatever the claim may or may not be, the city is? Can you better explain it a little bit?
Absolutely. So if we can actually jump to page 12, I can actually, that was what we were looking at from projections. I can actually get down to exactly what we're looking at, the exact number. So we flip to page 12. We have the actual renewal results for you. And we do this comparison high level to show your expiring program versus our proposed program. On the right, we run some analytics to help you understand, because oftentimes you look at, oh, our premium's up. Well, we do the analytics to help you understand, why is our premium? For example, if you buy 50 new vehicles, well, the premium is going to go up on that. But what was your net rate change? So we try to look at that from that perspective, because increased exposures, increased premiums, but does your rate change? And that's the big focus there. So, ma'am, when we take a look at the program, what we've put in here is your expiring program, where we show your limits and your deductibles, and then your proposed program, where we show limits, deductibles, and on the casualty, what's called a self-insured retention. And I believe that's what you're getting to. So if you look at in the blue bucket, what we're looking at right now is on your auto liability, we're going to buy $1 million in coverage. And on your other lines, your general liability, your law enforcement liability, and your public officials liability, we're recommending limits of $5 million. Why the split limits? One of our big things, and especially our expertise in the public sector, is understanding immunity laws and how we can best protect the city, preserve immunity while protecting you from potential, what we call federal tort exposure. So auto liability, the tort caps in Georgia are very strong. So we keep that at $1 million, because that is a state tort, a state law exposure. But when we get into the general liability, law enforcement, and the public official EPLI, we recommend higher limits on that to protect you from those federal exposures. For example, EEOC, civil rights violations, things there where you don't enjoy immunity on federal tort exposures.
Just so as not to confuse Councilwoman James, remember, if you don't mind, if I redirect her question another way, just to make certain, is your question, Ms. James, relative to, based upon us moving to the self-insured model, what is the fiscal impact? What is the increase that we would pay as a city over what we're currently paying, based upon the numbers that you're saying?
Yes, and I think he's going over that, because I'm seeing the.
Yep.
Because in his explanation, in all of the various tiers, it doesn't mean that we're going to budget for all of them.
Correct.
Right.
I want to make certain that we were clear on, we're not budgeting each one of those retention numbers that he's calling out, but there is a fiscal impact to the budget that we'll go over as soon as he's done.
Absolutely.
So I
So
just want to make certain that we didn't go down that path.
No, I understand.
Okay.
absolutely. So when you look at your retentions, so this is effectively your deductible, if you will. $250,000 on your auto liability, $25,000 on your physical damage, and then $250,000 on your general liability and law enforcement liability, and then $500,000 on the public officials EPLI. Why the higher on the public officials? That's where we've seen those loss. That's where we've seen some of those higher losses over the past years. That's where the market has seen them. So that's where they're setting the retention. But to your question about, and I can come back to this page to go through everything else, but if you flip the page, we can talk about financial impact. So when we talk about on page 13, we have two buckets here. We have fixed costs and variable costs. So the first up at the top where it says insurance costs, these are our fixed insurance costs. So your expiring fixed insurance costs, which means the premiums that you're going to pay, was $745,556. We are incurring a 6.9% fixed cost increase to $796,738. This includes a TPA services. So when you go to a self-insured model, as I mentioned, under a traditional guarantee cost structure, the carrier handles all the claims. Under a self-insured model, the insured or the city handles their claims on the front end because it's your dollars up front versus the carrier's dollars. However, we bring in a third-party claims administrator to actually administer the claims for you at the direction of the city. And we've already begun those meetings with Mr. Clark, Mr. Wiggins, and Ms. Lewis, talking that through. So when we look at our fixed insurance costs, 6.9% increase. And when we factor in the exposure increase, which means buildings, vehicles, budget, people, we actually have a net reduction of 0.4% on your fixed costs, which is really a great financial result for the city. Now, Councilman James, get into the variable costs. Now we talk about our retained losses. So what we've looked at over the past 5 years, if you recall back on page 8 where I was discussing the loss experience, we've calculated that you're effectively on an average paying out $250,000 in deductibles or retained losses is kind of what your variable today for the annual average of the past 5 years. Moving into this, and this number is a variable number, but your average annual losses for the past 5 years has been $619,953. Again, that includes that 2020 year that Mr. Clark pointed out was a big spike. I mean, alone, 18, 19, 20, and 21 were all larger years, even 22. But when we look back at 23, those numbers come down significantly. So that number is closer to what you'll be budgeting. However, it is a variable number. If things continue trending the way that they are, and we only really are worried more about auto losses, again, I think our incurred so far this year is $140,000. That number is only $140,000. So that number comes down. That's what we're budgeting for to potentially pay out. And we picked that number based on those previous 5 years, because that's how you figure out what's the future going to look like. Well, let's look at what the past looks like. And so we put that out there. The goal with Mr. Clark talked about training opportunities, educational opportunities, everything that we were hired to come in and do with the city of Forest Park. The goal is that we have a significant impact on that number. Auto accidents are going to happen. I mean, it's going to happen. There are going to be auto accidents out there. When you have a police department, you have public works, you just have people on the road. We know that stuff's going to happen. But can we reduce the frequency in which that happens? The goal everywhere else is, from an education standpoint, reviewing policies and procedures. Can we continue to improve and make sure that we're not running into the public officials' losses or employment practices losses by continuing to improve the way that we run as a city? So that number is a variable number that, and I've got to be clear, it could also go up. If all of a sudden we have a year like 2020, that number could increase. But the goal here is that as we continue to operate better and have fewer losses, fewer lawsuits that have merit and end up with rewards associated with them. The focus is that the city will save money in the long run. And really one of the big things here is it's really a changing in philosophy, going from buying insurance to financing your risk. And that's really what we're looking for and one thing that I haven't put on here, general modeling. The general insurance dollar, 50% of the insurance dollar goes to claims. So for every $1 in claims, $2 in premium is the general rule of thumb. Based on your losses, if a carrier was able to get enough rates, and that's one of the reasons why people have had to decline, because they have filed rates in the state and some of them can't get the rates at high enough, the fixed insurance costs would be north of $1.2 million, based on that 5-year annual average. So when we look at this, we are in a position where our fixed costs are actually in a really good position, and we have somewhat of a control over our destiny on the variable costs.
So here's my question.
Yes, ma'am.
It was stated that now that the city will handle its own claims, so what will be the actual role and responsibility of the governing body?
The governing body, that role doesn't really change. It really doesn't change. It's really more on the staff level of, again, we're bringing Gallagher Bassett, which is a division of Gallagher, to be your third-party claims administrator. They have been the TPA for the Georgia Municipal Association's government program since 1987. They are really kind of the gold standard in adjusting governmental risk claims, especially in the state of Georgia. So they're going to actually do the claims administration for you, but then there will be direction from the city over settlement authority. And we're onboarding all of that right now. So I know that Mr. Clark was on a call with myself, Mr. Wiggins, and Ms. Lewis just yesterday, talking about they're going to have authority up to, I think, like $1,000 to settle things. And then everything goes above that. That's all still being worked out, but there's going to be a level where they have the authority to go and settle something or come in and look for guidance from the city similar to, any city manager setup where he has authority to, sign contracts up to a certain level, and then governing body, it's a similar structure there where they'll have authority to settle up to a certain dollar amount, and then the city will have to authorize any payments over and above that number.
One of the things I want to add, similar to the work that Attorney Metrocardi has been doing, where each and every lawsuit or claim that is filed against us, we apprise counsel of what it is. And then once we get down the path of, we've gone through the proper processes with attorneys from both sides, and we get ready for a settlement or to go further, we bring that information back, or the attorney brings that information back for presentation to the governing body in executive session, and we make a recommendation for an amount not to exceed X number of dollars, regardless of what the amount is. Even with my authority, if it's a claim, I still want it brought back before this governing body, especially if it's something relative to a lawsuit or something of that magnitude. And I've never seen a lawsuit for $1,000, except for potholes or something in the road.
Yep. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if Attorney Metrocardi had a different spin.
No, that's exactly. So right now, your authorization is $10,000. So anything over $10,000 would need approval unless we adopt different thresholds.
And so that is a change, because anything over $10,000 previously, the insurance carrier just paid it. So that is where something would come into play with the governing body.
And if I may, so one of the things that gives you a lot more control, because even if y'all don't want to settle, you don't have a consent to settle clause. So even if you say, oh, I don't want to pay this out, the insurance company can still move forward and pay it without your consent. So now you have full control over it.
And that's a great point, because prior it was the insurance company's dollar.
Yeah.
Now it's your dollar, so you get to make the decision. That's where that control comes into play, where a lot of entities view, once they make this move, they all of a sudden see, hey, we have more control over this. We actually like the way this is operating. You may not make a move backwards as we continue to improve.
Any other questions or comments? All right,
The only other stuff to really talk about on this, back on page 12, is a couple of items. We have, obviously, Chubb is going to be your property carrier moving forward. We are recommending the inclusion of terrorism and active shooter coverage, which you have not had previously. The terrorism protects the buildings from any potential terrorist event. The active shooter provides coverage for soft costs, so that there ever were an incident in the city limits at a city property, it provides coverage for counseling services, crisis communication services, employee retraining, anything like that. So that is a recommendation that we are making, that 98% of our clients purchase that coverage because it broadens what you have currently. And then I was actually able to not only increase coverage, reduce the deductible, and reduce the premium on your cyber liability, which is a great item on there. And then we are going to be, with our move to the self-insured model with Safety National, we're actually recommending that we move it's actually a requirement that we also move your excess workers' compensation to Safety National as well. They are one of the biggest players in this space, and they are able to combine both the casualty and the excess workers' compensation together, and provide you that option. That is really everything. You know, the last couple pages in here, there is a page on page 14 about services that we provide to help with the administration of the claims. And then just a little more information around different things that we do for you. Got it. Mr. Clark always tells me I only have 30 minutes. I think I got it this time.
all right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mayor Butler, there are some budgetary impacts to this. Would the governing body rather go over those budgetary impacts when we discuss the budget, or now? It
Um,
won't change the approval that's needed. It's just how we amended our budget to reflect said changes of the self-insured model.
I'm okay with waiting for the budget.
Okay.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 24-25 renewal for our property casualty and loss insurance using the protected self-insured model as presented tonight by Gallagher?
So move.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there a second? That was Councilwoman Wells. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Rainey?
Councilmember James,
Yes.
Councilmember Anton,
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez, Councilmember Akins Wells, Councilmember Mears.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the partnership with the City of Forest Park.
All right, public hearing, council discussion and approval on the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget. This is our second public hearing. Background and history. The proposed funded dollar amount for the fiscal year 24-25 budget is $41,893,897. The budget meticulously allocates resources across various city priorities and programs. These allocations are made with the intent to enhance public safety, improve infrastructure, promote economic development, and provide essential services. From maintaining our parks and recreational facilities to supporting educational programs and ensuring the upkeep of our streets and utilities, the budget is designed to meet the diverse needs of our community. The city manager will present a full overview of this proposed budget.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor and Council, members of the governing body. Prior to us getting into the budget, we want to talk first about the impact of workers' comp. Do we have the sheets, Director Wiggins? Are they not?
Not for what we have here.
Property casualty and loss?
Yeah. We have what's in front of you. We have the proposed budget for adoption. If you go to the second page.
Second page of what, Director Wiggins? No, sir, that's the document that I'm referencing that we don't have.
This is the document. You don't have this document?
No, sir. Mayor and Council, I recommend that we go into executive session to discuss the personnel changes within this fiscal year budget to give the finance department time to provide the document that we have to go over so that all of you can see it. I don't feel comfortable presenting numbers to you that you can't see in front of you, as well as myself. Again, my sincerest apologies that you don't have those numbers in front of you, but in the spirit of fairness, we do have some personnel changes that we'd like to discuss within this budget with our HR department. And at such time, we discuss those, we can come out in hopes that those documents are in my hand for me to share with all of you.
All right, is there a motion to recess and enter into executive session for personnel, litigation, real estate, or legal matters?
So moved.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there a second? That was Councilman Gutierrez. All in favor? All right, thank you. No one's listening. Let me do it. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the executive session and reconvene into our special call meeting.
So moved.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there a second? That was Councilman Mears. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. So the public hearing. Per our charter, 10 minutes is allotted per side in its totality. So I'm going to ask if anyone is present that would like to speak in favor of the budget hearing to line up at the podium now. All right, not seeing anyone. Is there anyone who wanted to speak in opposition of the fiscal year 24-25 budget? You may line up at the podium now. Okay, not seeing anyone. Is there a motion to close said public hearing?
So moved.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there a second? That was Councilwoman Wells. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Now, we will have a presentation. We will have a presentation of the actual budget, but you want to do that now? Okay, Mr. Clark, you have the floor.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor and council members, we're excited to present the annual fiscal year 24-25 budget. The only change we want to talk to you about would be for the property casualty and loss insurance. And I'm assuming that everybody has the handouts.
You are correct. Rodney, can you pull that? I also have it where we can take a look, because that might be a little too small for,
I don't think we have it.
it should be on. I think you on the,
Oh,
folder.
in the folder.
All right, this spreadsheet that we have here, this is this was the analysis we did for the, for the insurance that we're gonna, that we have to pay for, that you just adopted, for the property and casual. And it's pretty much the whole insurance in its entirety, which includes vehicle insurance as well as the, workers' comp. If you concentrate on the green, the highlighted numbers in the highlighted green, that is the, updated proposal numbers that we went through, because the total amount for the insurance, if you look at the bottom, go down to the bottom for me, Rodney. It's coming out to be $812,000. With that, we went back through and we split it up between the departments that take care of these particular insurance. And we also included, but not in that number, we also included a reserve of $180,000 to take care of the uninsured. Anything just in case for the uninsured. With that, the reserves, we didn't change the total amount as far as the total budget. What we did was we went back and we put the reserve as well as all of the other costs in the individual account lines into the budget, but we did not change the number. The only thing that was changed, we lowered our capital from the 1.6 million to the 1 million. So we can, with that, we're gonna back it up with the ARPA funds. Along with that, we also lowered our contingency also about 200-some thousand. So we did not touch the total number for the budget, which is the 41 million that was stated, the 41 million point nine.
Butler, just for clarity purposes, I want to correct something.
Mhm.
That contingency is not for uninsured. That's the reserve for all the payments that we have towards our deductibles, correct?
The reserve, the 180,000 that we have here, that's only for insurance. That's not, we don't mingle that with the contingency fund. That comes, out Our contingency fund is separate from that. This is only for insurance.
I'm sorry, you said that was contingency only?
No, the 180,000 is only for insurance.
Only for insurance. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Is there anything else you're gonna present, sir?
I think that's it. Do we have
Okay.
any questions? I know it's kind of small, but I also wanted to also let you know that you have a manila folder up there, which includes everything in detail. We also have, in summary, the general fund as well as all of the special fund and the splosh. So in totally, this budget can be adopted and we won't have any audit fines.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Wiggins? Councilwoman James?
No questions.
Is Councilman Antoine still on?
No.
Councilman Gutierrez? Councilwoman Wells? Councilman Mears? All right, thank you. Mr. Clark, is there anything else?
Is there anything else?
No, that's it. That's it.
All right, Mayor and Council, so we'd ask you to approve the fiscal year 24-25 budget. In addition to that, we'd ask for you to approve the presentation of the proposed personnel changes for the 24-25 budget as presented.
Say that last part again. Approve the budget with what?
The proposed personnel changes as recommended by the Office of City Manager and the HR's office for various positions around the city.
All right, so is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 24-25 budget with the proposed personnel changes as recommended by our city manager and our HR director?
So moved.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there a second? That was Councilman Mears. Is there any further discussion? All right, Ms. Rainey?
Councilmember James,
Yes.
Councilmember Anton,
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez, Councilmember Wells, Councilmember Mears.
All right, thank you. And that's it, right? Was there something else? No? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That was Councilwoman James. Is there a second?
Second.
That's Council.